Hello all of you beautiful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and I think it's safe to say that if you are here on this channel, then you like two things: terrible comedy and video games. And trust me, there are a huge amount of brilliant titles to choose from. Halo, Doom, Sonic, Crash, Lester the Unlikely, and so many more classic titles that don't just give you the warm and fuzzies when you play them, but actively raise the bar of what a video game is. And yet, while all these games might hang on the walls of the Video Game Wall of Fame, maybe it's best if we don't look too closely, as you might find a fair few blemishes across the surface and sometimes a few tiny stinky nuggets on an otherwise golden throne. So let's do, well, exactly what I've just told you not to do and get out the magnifying glasses, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 terrible moments from the best video games. Number 10. I took an arrow to the knee, SKYRIM. Now, to kick this list off, I should explain. I'm not actually talking here about the overuse of this one line, nor the meme it spawned, which oversaturated the joke to hell and beyond, but instead, this is basically about the repetitive dialogue that is present within SKYRIM that will leave you feeling like you're in Groundhog Day. It's such a shame as well, because there has been a considerable effort to record more dialogue than some corners of the world have even spoken collectively, but when you have a game that stretches potentially hundreds of hours, it's going to become inevitable that you hear certain lines again and again. And as a result, it's going to mean one thing: that the immersion is pushed to breaking point. It's by no means the worst offender, but trust me, you will groan again and again when you have to hear about storm cloaks and the piss-weak excuses these guards have for not wanting to go adventuring. Still, besides that, SKYRIM is bloody brilliant. Number 9. BLIGHTTOWN, Dark Souls. To be clear, the remastered copy of Dark Souls fixes many issues that I am about to discuss, but for those playing this section on the original consoles, oh my lord, the frame rate, the frame rate, brother. Please help me. BLIGHTTOWN was so aptly named for how much of a stain it was on the original Dark Souls, and with the ability to now play without the massive lag and the screen tearing, it's actually a pretty well-designed area, tasking players with jumping over foul swamps and beating up, what is this, a flying garbage bag, and it's just gross. Yet, with the lag, with the inability to make your actions precise, with the sheer amount of blow darts that will end up in your ass and the original, this truly became the stuff of nightmares and internet legends. You need to have a plan of action in mind the moment you step foot here, but that's almost impossible thanks to the technical issues. Throughout the rest of the game, there was a sense of challenge and fairness, but here though, it felt like the cards were stacked against you from the start, and they bloody stunk to boot. Number 8. Fighting SAURON in The Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. I'm not gonna lie, this game absolutely rocks, and it is so weird to see it fade into obscurity when it clearly deserves much more love. And taking a page out of the Final Fantasy books, The Lord of the Rings: The Third Age favored a turn-based battle system and managed to add in even more to the lengthy tale that we all know and love. And yet, while much of this was enjoyable, such as exploring the mines of Moria and facing the Balrog, the last hurdles were a terrible experience. The final fight was so lackluster, to say the least, and highlighted several issues with an otherwise amazing game. The entire battle was awkward, disjointed, and far from believable. And by that, I mean, remember in the books where the party went up to the Eye of Sauron itself and battered the piss out of it with swords and arrows? No, because that would be really dumb, right? Well, guess what you have to do here? It's not even the physical embodiment of the all-seeing villain, it's just you poking an eyeball, and it feels totally lackluster as a result. Number 7. The flying machine in Assassin's Creed 2. The Assassin's Creed games have always played fast and loose with history despite what they'll have you believe, and it's why we always seem to find characters leaping out of the pages of our collective narrative despite their actual lives not really lining up with this. Most interactions are memorable, allowing us to meet legendary figures or brilliant minds, and on paper, the chance to meet Leonardo da Vinci sounds like something that you would never want to pass up, right? Well, mostly it is, but the sections with the flying machine, well, they're just atrocious. This bulky contraption was so difficult to control, and it was made worse by its awkward mechanics, and the narrative could have easily sufficed without it. And while you're trying your best to keep the old girl airborne, it must have crossed your mind at some point that Ezio is an assassin and could have easily found a multitude of other ways to complete this task more efficiently. There was nothing wrong with Da Vinci's inclusion, but this thing grounded the fun entirely. At least you got to smash it to pieces, I guess. Number 6. Zero's RC missions in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was a monolith of a game, a sprawling playground of chaos that pushed the PS2 and original Xbox to its limit when it first dropped back in 2004 and 2005 respectively. Fans lapped up every chance they got to murder and motor, and applauded the creative mission designs that managed to make hours pass without feeling taxing. Well, that was until they got to Zero's missions. These missions involved using RCs to help him take down his rival and arch enemy Berkeley. Winning the war does end up making Carl a ton of money, but that didn't stop the entire subplot from being an absolute chore from start to finish. Like the flying machines in Assassin's Creed 2, the mechanics here were clunky and awful to navigate, causing frustration up and down the board. And true, this was an optional subplot, but my god did it produce some truly rage-inducing moments. In fact, many speedrunners to this day dread this thanks to its unpredictable nature. Number 5. ALGERNON WASP'S exotic missions in Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 is by far and large the greatest Western cowboy epic to grace video game platforms. Its gigantic world allowed for deep exploration and endless adventures filled with NPCs and creatures all living realistic lives. If you were along for this story, this was all pretty much grand, but completionists will know all too well about ALGERNON WASP'S set of missions, as collecting the full list of exotic items took forever. The player was forced to either seek out incredibly rare flowers or frequently rotate between the same few spots in the hopes of hunting, snowy and little egrets, and this was just the start of a boring and time-consuming thread. The entire affair could take hours and hours to finish, and in the end the rewards were no more than an exotic hat and his revolver, both of which were relatively useless by the time of completion, unless you went out of your way to complete them really, really early. Basically what it was a blemish on an otherwise brilliant title that left us wanting this WASP to buzz off. Number 4. Niflheim in God of War. The rebooted God of War game may well be my personal game of, ever. I love this story, the combat, the presentation, the sound. I've listed everything that a game is, and yet it still doesn't feel like enough praise. The writing, especially between boy and angry dad, is outstanding, managing to elicit emotion from even the most sparse of dialogues. And while I couldn't wait to see them ascend to the highest peak, there was one area that I really, really never wanted to go back to, and that was Niflheim. Now, the gimmick here is that this land is plagued by a toxic fog that will drain a meter, and once that's empty, begin to chew through your life. You'll want to risk your health though, because there's prizes to be found in this foggy funhouse, which are guarded by groups of randomly assorted enemies. If you die though, you lose all of the mist echoes you've gathered and have to start from scratch. Oh, and there's also a Valkyrie in the maze as well. Brilliant. This means that you'll be repeating the same area over and over, grinding out echoes in order to close realm tears and open chests, and it is, to quote Scott Pilgrim, boring. It is the one time that I looked up a guide on how to farm the echoes to get out of this as quickly as possible. That is not a good sign in an otherwise, I'm just going to say it, perfect game. Number 3. Lady Comstock's Ghost, BIOSHOCK Infinite. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the biggest fan of Infinite, seeing it as the worst in the trilogy. I know, I don't care. However, that's like saying that this piece of chocolate cake isn't as good as this piece of chocolate cake with fudge sauce on it, because they're all great experiences, just the first two were better, in my opinion. And Infinite was great, except for this one part. The bright and vibrant world of Columbia might be able to immerse you in a world above the clouds, but this boss battle with Lady Comstock's Ghost sees the title plummet down the rankings of player enjoyment. This stupid showdown with a spectre happens multiple times throughout the game and is an absolute bullet sponge in the worst sense. There's also a massive swathe of enemy goons that you need to get through, all of which highlight the game's strange weapon limit loadout, forcing you to use guns you hate just because they're the only bullets available. It is a bad boss fight which drags down an otherwise enjoyable high-swinging romp. Number 2. JABBA'S RANCOR boss fight in LEGO Star Wars. On paper, LEGO and Star Wars are pretty much a match made in heaven. Two brands widely known for easygoing, casual fun alone or with friends and family. And you know what? The games are, for the most part, pretty bloody excellent. However, one moment in the Return of the Jedi episode of LEGO Star Wars is so infuriating that it might ruin any time that you and your younger siblings or kids might have with this title. The Rancor battle in Jabba the Hutt's palace requires the player to activate a lever which drops a guard for the Rancor to pick up and then be distracted by. The foe must then walk across the arena to the right place for the player to shoot an object, causing rocks to fall onto it, thereby damaging its health. This is a kid's game. Why was that so complicated to explain? But I mean, once you know how to beat this foe, it seems pretty trivial, but it's the timings which complicate this fight and make everything awkward to slog through. Plus, the AI is, for lack of better words, utter dog dick, meaning that it will sometimes move out of position or not take the bait, and trust me, that can become incredibly infuriating. I've got 3 younger brothers. I had to sit with them through this for 45 minutes. Good. And number 1, that damn corridor. Final Fantasy 15. I really don't think I've got the strength left in me to describe how horribly boring Chapter 13 of Final Fantasy 15 was when it first released, but I will try. It was a misguided idea to make the player experience the futility and loss the protagonists were going through in the story at this time, but it absolutely backfired by actually punishing the player with a series of copy-paste corridors and combat that felt completely out of place in this otherwise free-flowing action RPG. The delivery of this painful section was enough to light up message boards across the world asking for ways to shorten the experience by any means necessary. And things got so bad that in the subsequent editions of the game, this section held a bypass and altered gameplay to actually keep people invested. Outside of this chapter, the game rewards exploration and approaching combat in dynamic ways. Plus, we were able to fall in love with the excellent characters that made up our party. But here though, isolated and forced to play the game the way that you were ordered to, Chapter 13 sticks out like a carbuncle on this title. And there we go, those were 10 terrible moments from the best video games. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. And I hope that you, my friend, are living your best life. Hope that you are not experiencing any terrible moments at this present time, but that is okay if you are, because you are not alone, my friend. You have friends, family, professionals in the sport industry. All of us care about you and want you to do well, to go out there and live that best life. It can be a rocky start and it can be hard sometimes, but we are in this together. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. And if you want to check out something a bit different, then why not go and check out Live and Let's Dice. It's my board game channel that I have here on YouTube. As always, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.